Hello everyone. Today I'd like to talk about Azure Sentinel. What is Azure Sentinel? Why do we need to use Azure Sentinel? Azure Sentinel is a cloud native SIEM solution provided by Microsoft. As it as the name itself indicates, it's Azure. It's based on one of the it's one of the Azure services provided by Microsoft that will be leveraged as part of subscription within the Azure portal, right? So that being said, it's a cloud native SIEM solution. Um, you can ingest logs however you wanted, as long as you pay for the ingested logs for the price provided by Microsoft, right? So why do we need to use Azure Sentinel? There are a lot of SIEM solutions out there, and there are very good SIEM solutions like Splunk, Logarithm, ArcSight, and even AT&T Cybersecurity. There are a lot of SIEM solutions out there. Why do we think that we need to use Azure Sentinel? Uh, uh, One of the main advantage of Azure Sentinel is that it's a cloud-native SIEM solution. So you know there is nothing that we need to deploy from a standpoint of server. There is nothing that we need to deploy from a standpoint of the capabilities to leverage within the uh, Microsoft environment, right? So you can just always log into portal.azure.com, and then you can just subscribe to Azure Sentinel, and then that is all you'll have to from a standpoint of subscribing. So it's a few clicks away to have a fully fledged SIEM solution, and then you can always ingest logs, deploy various connectors, and census logs to the cloud, whatever you wanted to do. Maybe you wanted to just collect logs from your Windows machines. Maybe you wanted to collect logs from your Linux machines. You always have the capability, and then you can always visualize, you can always query your logs that are being ingested, and then uh, to identify threats within your environment. Uh, More likely, Microsoft Azure uh, to be deployed from a standpoint of the services. Maybe you might have already some kind of services subscribed within your Azure portal. Like for example, you might have deployed Azure virtual machines, or maybe you might have deployed a cluster with respect to Kubernetes. Maybe you might have leveraged some kind of application workspace within your Microsoft Azure service, one of the Azure service. There are various reasons that you can start leveraging the Azure Sentinel for monitoring with respect to, and also with respect to event management from a standpoint. So this way, it's right out of the box. There are a bunch of various correlation rules, analytics rules that were created by Microsoft to be leveraged, and then you can just within a few clicks away, those rules can be enabled, and then you can monitor your environment as quickly as possible, right? So before we jump right into the terminology and stuff, I just want to take a step back and give a 10,000 foot overview of how to deploy this Azure Sentinel platform, right? Before we dive in, I just want to do a quick glimpse. First things first is that you will need to just log into portal.azure.com and then sign up, right? You need to sign up for Azure Services with your maybe you might want to give your credit card information. Maybe you just want to give your phone number. Maybe you just want to give your name, first name and last name, and then you just sign up for the Azure tenant. Once you subscribe to that, you'll have to subscribe, purchase a subscription, right? So in my case, I just went in and then created a new subscription as pay as you go. Like that means that as I go, based on the resources that I utilized, Microsoft will be charging me. So that being said, once I subscribed, once I took a subscription as pay as you go. And then the next step is basically you'll need to have a resource group. A resource group is nothing but a collection of resources, right? Maybe you just want to have a bunch of resources deployed to a specific resource group. You will be leveraging this group. So this way, so this way, any resources that you deployed within the resource group will be charged accordingly. And a resource group can be placed in specific locations. So this way, all the data that's being stored within that specific resource group will be stayed in that location or region. There are various regions within the in the world um, that Microsoft Azure leverages as data centers, right? So this way, maybe for some reason you wanted to store your logs within United States. Maybe you just wanted to store your logs within Europe, right? So this is where the resource group would come into perspective, and then uh, you can always just go and create your own resource group and then associate with a specific subscription. So this way, any resources deployed will be built accordingly. So in my case, I just created a resource group named as demo group and associated with the pay as you go subscription, and a location to be US East 2. So this way, any data to be resided within the US East 2 region, right? So that being said, once the resource group is created, the next thing that you'll have to do is basically create a log analytics workspace, right? So a log analytics workspace is nothing but, as the name itself indicates, it's an analytics workspace. This is where you would come here and do some kind of uh, deployments, right? For example, maybe maybe you just wanted to have an agent deployed onto your Windows machine. Maybe you just wanted to deploy a um, Linux agent onto your Linux machine, right? And you wanted to do some configuration with respect to the syslog. This is where you would come in and then add your facilities, right? So that's where this log analytics workspace would come into perspective, and this is the prerequisite to ensure that a subscription with respect to Azure Sentinel is added. So that being said, I just went ahead and just created a new workspace and associated that workspace with a resource group of demo group, and it has its own subscription. So that being said, so once the workspace is deployed, the next thing is basically you'll have to subscribe to Azure Sentinel. So right, so that's a few clicks away with respect to Azure Sentinel. Once you click on new, and then it would ask you to select a workspace. Like I mentioned before, a workspace is a prerequisite to have a subscription associated. So this way, all the logs that are collected into the workspace will be leveraged with respect to correlation, with respect to detection of threats from the standpoint of various data that's being collected into that workspace, right? So I went ahead and subscribed to that specific workspace by clicking new and then select the workspace, and then just create it. That's all you'll have to do to ensure to enable the capabilities of the SIEM, right? So I went ahead and just created a new um, subscribe to the Azure Sentinel to this specific workspace named as Analytics Workspace. So that being said, this is where you would come in here and review your logs. Maybe you just want to deploy new connectors. Maybe you just wanted to ingest data from various sources. This is where this is the first page, and this is the get started page where you would want to start your deployment. Maybe you just wanted to monitor. Maybe your SOC would want to query the logs that are being collected, or maybe you wanted to manage it accordingly to ensure that you are any new threats that are being emerged within the world, or even within your environment, are detected and displayed as an alert, or maybe sent as an email. Maybe just create a new incident from a standpoint. So that being said, we will go ahead and do a couple of things here today with respect to collection, right? So um, uh, like I showed you before, it's the log analytics workspace is where you deploy your agents, like your Windows agents or Linux agents, and you wanted to do some configuration. You might want to just go into log analytics workspace, and then download your agent and then deploy it to your machines. Maybe you wanted to collect logs from your Windows server, right? That's where the log analytics workspace would come in handy to deploy an agent to your Windows server, um, or even your Linux server for that matter, right? So I'm just going to quickly walk through um, the different pages within the Azure Sentinel. So this way, we can real quick jump into just deployment of few connectors, and I'm just going to show you a deployment of agent on the capabilities there, and then we will end this video there. So that being said, as you can see here, news and guides, this is the get started page. Once you could just subscribe to Azure Sentinel, this is where you would land. First things first, obviously, right? You'll have to collect the data from various sources. This way, all the logs will be leveraged for based on your correlation rules that you create. And from then you can just create your own security alerts, right? Based on what's important and what's not. Because at any point in time, if it's an enterprise environment, there could just be millions of logs collected from various sources. So we wanted to make sure that we only take action on meaningful security alerts, right? So that's where the analytics tools would come into perspective, and you wanted to automate them, right? Let's say you wanted to block an IP address that's found from one of your security alert, and then you will be leveraging the automate and orchestration platform built in by just configuring some logic apps, some workbooks, some playbooks to automate any kind of common tasks that are obvious, right? So that being said, that's the news and guides, and this is the overview page. This is where you would just see the events and alerts collected, generated over time, or events which are collected and alerts that are generated from events over time. Excuse me. So logs, this is where uh, you would just wanted to get started based on what's collected, right? Based on the Azure monitor or based on the analytics logs that were collected. Again, I just wanted to bring a good point here, right? So in order for you to query any logs within the Azure Sentinel platform, you would want to know more about the KQL. KQL is nothing but Custo Query Language. That's the language that will be leveraged to query the logs that are being collected from various sources, right? So incidents is nothing but it's a page where you just wanted to see any kind of threats visible from your based on the alerts generated within your organization, right? It could just be incident based on the few of the alerts that were generated, and you can have a playbook defined, and then you can always just define the severity of the alert based on some of the rules that you create at some point in time while you're leveraging this platform, right? So that being said, a workbook is a place where you just wanted to have a some kind of dashboard to easily visualize what kind of data that's coming into from the various sources, right? So it's a quick way to understand what's going on based on all the events, all the logs collected from various sources. And by default, I think there are about 90 templates provided by Microsoft and other vendors too, right? So this way you can just go in and then just click on view template and save it. So this way you have a quick visibility on what's going on with the logs that are being collected from those sources, right? So kind of a quick charts, like it could just be pie chart, bar chart, or maybe it could just be a quick pivot table that's built in, so you don't have to create out of the box, right? So if you wanted, you can always just come in here and just create a new workbook. So this way, this is where you would just come in and just do a quick query, right? Write your own query and stuff, right? So maybe you just wanted to add something else, right? You just wanted to add some text parameters and query, right? So this is where add a metric, maybe a group, whatever the thing it is. This is where you would just come in and then create your own workbook if you wanted to, right? So That being said, that's about workbooks. Hunting, as it clearly states that it's hunting. Maybe you wanted to write your own query rules. So this way, any data that's being collected from sources are queried and displayed you as back as results. So this way you can just generate them as an alert, or maybe just convert them into an incident, right? So by default, there are about 199 total queries. You can always click them and you can always run them. Um, uh, as you can see, you can just run all the queries if you wanted to, but nothing will be displayed because no logs are being collected within this workspace, right? To this workspace, right? So that being said, there are about 199 queries, and then you can always just come in and just write your own query with the KQL language that you learned, right? So that being said, uh, let's just go and jump right in. Entity behavior. Entity behavior is nothing but, let's say, for example, it's just going to enrich the entity profiles, right? Like, let's say, for example, users tries to log in today from United States, but after 1 hour, you might see logins from China, right? That's where the anomalous entities would come into perspective, right? So maybe you just wanted to enrich the data. Maybe you just wanted to see where this user is from a standpoint. This is where the user entity behavior analytics would come in and help you a lot with respect to machine learning based on the data that it learned over the period of time, and generate as an incident or an alert based on how you write your rules, right? So threat intelligence preview is nothing but it's just a quick preview of threat intelligence indicators. You can always add new threat intelligence indicator as you wanted to. So this way that threat TI indicators will be leveraged within your query rules or analytics rules that you create, or maybe you wanted to edit some of the default templates provided by Microsoft, right? So that being said, data connectors, this is the page where you wanted to start identifying, scoping, right? So maybe you have firewall name with vendor name Fortinet. Maybe you wanted to ingest logs from Office 365. Maybe you just wanted to ingest logs from sign-in logs. Maybe you just wanted to ingest logs from ATP, right? Microsoft has its own service-to-service connectors. It's very quick, pretty straightforward. A couple of clicks away, you are ready to see the logs that are being collected from various other sources with respect to Microsoft. There might be a few complicated deployments from a standpoint of other connectors, right? Because you might want to just configure something else in other tools to ensure that to have the logs collected from your other data sources, right? So you have various data sources, right? Maybe you just wanted to ingest logs via syslog. Maybe you just wanted to ingest logs via Ceph format, right? Maybe you just wanted to ingest logs from Barracuda firewall. Maybe you just wanted to ingest logs from Cisco ASA, right? So there are various connectors available today with respect to Azure Sentinel, and of course, Microsoft always improvises and adds new connectors day to day from a standpoint of what's important and what's not out there with respect to various vendor products to ensure that all the logs are collected accordingly. So analytics, like I said before, analytics are nothing but it's a rule. It's a place where you can just create your own rules. You can always just use templates and then modify the template rule and then just create your own. And then that's where you enable those rules. So this way, whenever you write a rule, whenever you enable a rule, that specific a rule, if triggered based on the data that's being ingested, is gonna generate an alert or as an incident to ensure that the specific your SOC team acts accordingly, right? Automation is nothing but, again, it has the capability of SOAR, right? Security orchestration, automation, and remediation, right? So maybe you just wanted to have a quick workflow created. Maybe, let's say, for example, you found an IP address that's something that's malicious, based on threat intelligence, based on maybe manual input that you did, and then you just wanted to automate it. Maybe you just wanted to block that IP address if found, based on threat intelligence platform. on your firewall, or maybe add it to Azure firewall, whatever the integration. There are a bunch of playbooks you can run on incidents. So this way, um, it's fully automated. You don't have to do anything else from a standpoint of uh, um, initial trigger of. So this way, that specific incident is remediated as quickly as possible, right? So, and quickly, settings page is nothing but it's just where you wanted to see some pricing, right, with respect to Azure Sentinel. As you can see, 100 GB per day, you're going to get 50% discount over pay as you go. Today, you can get charged $2 per GB of data ingested. So that being said, so I'm just going to quickly first deploy a couple of connectors, right? Let's say, for example, I wanted to ingest Office 365 logs. I would come in here, search for Office 365, right? And then click on that, and then click on Open Connector page, right? So ensure that you met the prerequisites. I logged in as global administrator today, so which is the reason why I have access to read and write permissions for this specific workspace, and I have the permission of global administration with respect to permissions, right? So I'm just going to collect SharePoint, Teams, Exchange logs, right? And then click on Apply Changes, right? So this way. Now, as you can see, Exchange Online, maybe you just wanted to deploy a workbook. A workbook is nothing but a place where you have some dashboards. So you can just always just go and out of the box, you can just go and create quick workbooks. So this way, those workbooks are deployed. So that being said, for this specific connector, Office 365, you have 6 workbooks, 3 queries, and 26 analytics rule templates. It's pretty straightforward. You can always, as you can see, there are about 26 of them. You can always just click, let's say, for example, Exchange Audit Log Disable, right? So you can just come here, click on Analytics, right? And then click on Rule Templates, and then you can search for Exchange Audit Log Disable. Maybe I just wanted to enable that rule, right? So as you can see here, maybe after a couple of minutes, you should be able to see this specific data source as green because I currently enabled to collect those specific logs from Office 365. I'm just going to create this rule, and then I'm still just going to not change anything right now. I'm just going to enable this. I'm just going to set the rule logic. As you can see, there is a query that was written by Microsoft. Now, if you wanted to change or edit something, you can always come here and leverage the query language and then change accordingly, right? So now I'm just gonna use the current default template, and I wanted to run this every hour, right? Not necessarily every day, right? So I just wanted to look on every hour and look data from the last 1 hour. So this way, any alerts that were generated greater than 0 to be triggered from a standpoint. Maybe I wanted to group all events into a single alert, right? Or maybe you can just trigger an alert for every event that was generated based on your query, right? Once stop running query after the alert is generated, right? Maybe you wanted to turn it on or turn it off, right? Maybe there could just be new alerts, right? So I'm just going to keep it off. I don't want to just generate incidents from this. I'm just going to just create quick alerts. And of course, you can always group multiple alerts into an incident for quick and easy investigation. For now, I'm just going to disable anything and then click on automated response. For now, I do not have any playbooks created, so I'm not going to leverage any automation and stuff for now. I'm just going to quickly review, and then validation is passed. I'm just going to create it, right? That's few clicks away. You have a rule named Exchange Audit Log Disable. For example, someone, some malicious actor logged in and then disabled Exchange Audit Log, and now you have the logs collected from the Office 365 to the Azure Sentinel workspace, and now every hour when it's going to query, it knows, it recognizes that based on the logs that it collected, it recognizes that the audit log was visible, and now that specific alert is going to get triggered, right? So now there are about two active rules um, that were deployed, right? That being said, um, that's a quick overview of Office 365. Maybe you want to deploy one more connector, right? You always have instructions and how to do stuff. From a standpoint of Microsoft, there is pretty much robust documentation on how to deploy every single connector out there, right? Based on the scope of your enterprise environment, or even uh, medium to large business environment. So let's say, for example, Azure, right? So I wanted to also ingest logs from Azure, right? So I'm just going to click on Azure Active Directory, right, and then open the connector page. And I did met all the permissions, prereqs that are needed, right? I just want to collect signing logs, audit logs, non-interactive, all the logs maybe for now, right? So I'm just going to apply that. Now maybe you just wanted to have Azure Active Directory sign-in logs workbook template, right? I'm just gonna click on um, save the template and save it to a specific region, right? And this is where you would just come in and view the saved workbook. After some data, you should just be able to see some dashboards and you know, get a quick glimpse on what's going on based on the logs that it's collecting, right? You can again, you can always come into analytics and create your own rule based on the logs that are being collected, or maybe you just wanted to uh, you know create a rule from the template that was pre-built by Microsoft, right? Whatever the scenario it is. So you have there are about 98 connectors, and again, you can always ingest logs via Ceph format. You can always ingest logs by deploying an agent, Linux agent, on your on-prem network. Maybe you just wanted to have those logs from your firewall forwarded back to the connector, and the Linux agent is just going to forward back to the Azure cloud, right? So that being said, I'm just going to quickly go over through the log analytics workspace again, and then show you the agent management, right? I just deployed an agent, which is the reason why you see one Windows computer agent connected. I just leveraged this download Windows agent 64-bit, and then just did run through that exe file that was downloaded onto my machine. And then it's just going to ask me to enter the workspace ID, right? Because, you know, this is where you wanted to send the logs to, right? So I leveraged, in my case, I leveraged these credentials, uh, workspace ID. This is where I wanted to send the logs to. So this is where this specific information is leveraged while while I did install the agent. And the configuration part is pretty straightforward, right? Maybe you just wanted to ingest all the logs. Maybe you just wanted to ingest specific logs. For example, security only logs, right? So this way you are not paying for all the um, logs that are unrelevant for this specific scenario, right? Just wanted to ingest all the only specific kind of logs for monitoring scenario, right? So that being said, you can always come in here and also deploy the Windows performance counters if you wanted to, um, and you can always just collect those as needed, and you can always deploy the Linux performance counters too. So this way you can those specific logs are collected from your Linux machines. And again, you can always come here and configure the uh, syslog, right? So this way only specific supported facilities are collected, and unnecessary logs are not collected from your data sources, right? So that's part of agents. And again, I'm just going to go back to Azure Sentinel. So this way I want to make sure it's clear for you guys. um, as you can see, today I just installed one agent, and I had seen about 37 events collected. And again, those only belongs to Heartbeat. It's not collecting other events as of now, right? So so that being said, I also deployed a couple of connectors with respect to Office 365 and Azure Sign, right? Um, so this way, um, those connectors are going to collect the data and send it back to the specific workspace. So that's a quick overview of deploying agents as well as connectors within the Azure Sentinel SIEM solution. You always have the capabilities of creating your own rules to ensure that any new threats that you wanted to get alerted on. So um, you have your own queries that you can write by yourself with respect to KQL, and then get alerted on. That being said, I'd like to end the conversation today. I hope this session is helpful. If you have any questions, please reach out to me via comment section. Uh, Thank you so much for your time. Bye now.